Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Monique. If you are new here, please kindly do well to click on the red button below to subscribe. In these tutorials, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful shirt dress with double layer ruffles and bishop collar. So let's get into it. So I'll be using a 3 yards of cotton fabric for these tutorials. So I've gone ahead to fold the fabric into 2. Then I use the biggest part of the body, which is the hip. I added extra 7 inches. So I'll be folding the center front by 3/4 inch. So I'll give it a good press. Afterwards, I'll refold it again by 1 inch. So that means I'm double folding this center front. This will serve as our button allowance. As you can see, I have 1 inch here. So I'll also give it a good press. So after doing that, I'm going to take the shoulder line. So this is where my measurement will start from. So I'll take the shoulder width. The shoulder is 7.5. I'm adding extra half an inch, that's 8 inches. So I'll be using 7 inches for the sleeve. It's a cut together sleeve. So I'll use 7 inches here. So after doing this, I'm going to take 1 inch from this point for the shoulder slope. Afterwards, I'll take the neck width. I'll be using 3 inches for the neck width. So I'll start taking the measurement from the center front. I'll place the 3 inches here. Afterwards, I'm going to come down by either 2 or 2.5 inches. So I'll just use 2.5 inches for the neck depth. So I'll go ahead and connect it. So afterwards, I'll just connect the shoulder slope to the neck width like so. Then from this shoulder slope, I'm going to take the chest line. So I'll place the chest line here. The chest line is 8 inches. And from this point, I'll be using 9 inches. So I'll start taking all the vertical measurements. So I'll take the shoulder to waist. The shoulder to waist is 17 inches. I'll also take the shoulder to hip. The shoulder to hip is 26 inches. Afterwards, I'm going to take the shoulder to full length. So the dress is 40 inches long, but I'll be attaching a ruffle. So I'll be using 30 inches here for the shirt. For the ruffles, I'll add extra 10 inches later on. So I'll go ahead and mark out the lines. So I'm placing the 30 inches. I'm adding extra half an inch. That's 30.5 inches for seam allowance. That's half inches for seam allowance. As you can see, I'm connecting my lines. So like I said earlier, it's a cut together sleeve. So from this point, I'm going to come down by 9 inches for the sleeve length. So I'll take it this way. Then I'll come in by 2.5 inches. So I'll make a little curve to meet this 2.5 inches mark like so. So afterwards, I'm going to take the bust circumference. All my measurement is going to start from the center of this button allowance, because that's where the button hole is going to be, on the center here. So I'm adding 2 inches to all my measurement. My bust is 38. I'll add extra 2 inches. That will give me 40. 40 divided by 4 will give me 10. I'm adding extra 2 inches for seam allowance. So I'll just take this line straight down like so. Then I'll reshape the armhole to meet this line so that it will align. So afterwards, I'll do the same thing on the waist. I'll start the measurement from the center of the button here. That's the button allowance. So I'll place the waist. I'm adding 2 inches. Like I said, the waist is 31. I'm adding extra 2 inches. That will give me 33. Quarter of 33 will give me 8.25. So I'll add extra 2 inches. It's a free dress, so it needs enough seam allowance. So I forgot to mark out the hip line, so let me go ahead and mark it out. So on the hip is 41. I'll add extra 2 inches. That will give me 43. 43 divided by 4 will give me 10.75. So I'll add extra 2 inches also for seam allowance. So what I have on the hip line, I'm going to place it on the full length. So I have about 13.5. So I'll place it here like so. So I'll go ahead and connect all the lines like this. So after doing this, I'll go ahead and cut it out. So this is the front pattern. So what I'll do, I'll just secure it with a pin before cutting the back. I'll be using the front to cut out the back. So this is the fabric I'll be using to cut out the back. So I'll place the front on the back. So remember I said the front I added 7 inches for seam allowance. For the back I'll add only 4 inches. So I'll place the front and the back to cut it out. So I'll make sure the middle of the button allowance, that is the middle here, I'll make sure it's on the center back. That's the folded part here. So I'm going to align it like this. The middle of the button allowance, I'll make sure it's aligning with the center back. Then I'll cut it out. I hope you understand. So this is our front and back panel. So I'm going to notch the neck width. So after notching it, I'm going to cut out the front neckline like so. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the back, for the neck depth of the back, and I'll curve it out like so. So that means the neck width is the same as the front. So I'll separate the front from the back. So we'll keep the back aside and work on the front. So I'm going to separate the front. Remember, it's going to have a 2 panel. We're making a shirt. So I'm going to open this up like this. Then I'm going to cut it out from the center here. So that we can have the left and right panel on the front shirt. So I'm going to fold this like this. So because of the way we folded it, this part, we are going to refold it again so that it will align. So I'm refolding this part. Remember, I folded it with 3/4 and 1 inch. So I'll just give it a good press like the other side. So I've ironed this other side, as you can see. So this is the left and this is the right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add interfacing to it. Then I'm going to top stitch it all the way down. I'll do the same thing for this part. I'm going to top stitch it. I'll use a very tiny stitch and make sure it's like 1/4 inch, and I'll sew it all the way down. So I've gone ahead, I added interfacing. I forgot to mention I added interfacing on the button allowance before top stitching it. It's very important you add interfacing on the button allowance so that it will give it weight. So this is the stitch I made. I made a very tiny stitch. Sorry, my fabric is wet. It's because of the iron. So this is the back panel. I'm going to place the good side of the front on the good side of the back. So this is the left panel and the right panel of the front pattern. I'm placing good side to good side. So I'm going to sew it by 1/2 inch on the shoulder all the way to the other side. Then I'm going to sew the side seam by 1 inch. I'll sew it from here all the way till I get to the end. I'll repeat the same thing here. I'll start sewing it from the sleeve all the way by 1 inch until I get to the end. So guys, I've done that. I've sewn the side seam. So this is the other side. I've also gone ahead to sew the shoulder together by 1/2 inch. So we have one piece now. So for a female dress, the right side is always where the buttonhole is. So the right side is going to be on top of the left side. So that's where you fix your buttonhole for a female dress. So this other side will have the buttons. So I'm going to top stitch this part here. That's the end of the dress. I'm going to secure it with a pin. I'll be top stitching this part. So after top stitching it, I'll attach the ruffle to it. Remember, we're going to cut a ruffle. So I'm going to get the round of this measurement. I'm going to measure it all the way round. So I have about 45 inches. So I'm going to times it by 3 to cut out the ruffles. So the length I have here is 30 inches, as you can see. So I'll be cutting the ruffles by 10 inches. So let me do that. So I've gone ahead to cut out the panel that I'll be using for the ruffles. I cut out 2. So like I said, I times the round by 3 to get the full length. I have about 120. So the length I'm working with for the ruffle is around 12 inches. I'll be using 2 inches for seam allowance. So I'll join them together here so that I'll have one panel and I'll sew it. So after I do that, then I'm going to make a loose stitch on my sewing machine. I'll make a loose stitch all the way so that I can make ruffles after doing a loose stitch. Then on the lower part, I'm going to hem it by 1/2 inch and I'll refold it by 1 inch. Then I'll stitch it all the way and I'll show you when I'm done. So I've done that. This is the ruffles. So I used one of the threads that I stitched to pull it to form the ruffles I need. So this is the outcome. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick the 2 ends. That's the 2 ends of the panel, good side to good side. So I'm going to sew it this way by 1/2 inch. So let me pin it up. So I'll sew it by 1/2 inch. So after I do that, I'm going to tuck this in. That's the main dress. I'll tuck it in to the ruffles like this. So remember I said I'm going to top stitch this part. I'll do that later. After I do that, I'll now attach the ruffles on it like so. So I'll make sure the ruffle sizes the circumference of the hemline. So I'll sew it round by 1/2 inch and I'll show you. So I've done that. So this is the ruffles. I've attached it to the dress. So I stitched it by 1/2 inch. So it's a double layer ruffle. So I'm going to attach one more ruffle on the waistline. So I'm going to take my measuring tape. I'm going to take a measurement from the shoulder to the waist. My waist is 17 inches, but I'm going to use 16 inches for the ruffles. So I've marked a straight line and I'll be attaching a ruffle here. So from this center point, I'm going to fix the ruffle all the way to the other side of the dress. That's immediately after the side seam allowance. So maybe I'll use maybe around 2 inches. I'll place about 2 inches here. Then I'm going to measure what I have here. So I'm going to measure from this point. So I have about 13 inches. So I'm going to times it by 3 to cut another panel for the ruffles. So from this waistline, I'll take the length of the ruffles. That is where I want the ruffle to stop. So I think I'm going to stop at 20 inches. The length of the ruffle is going to be around 20 inches. So this is the panel I'll be using for the ruffles. So this is the length of the dress, of the ruffle, I beg your pardon. So I have around 20 inches. I'll be using 2 inches for seam allowance on the hemline. Then for the width, remember I said I times it by 3 to get the width. I have around 37 inches. So on this part, just like we did for the button allowance, I'm going to make a placket. So I'm going to fold this part by 3/4 inch and I'll refold it by 1 inch. So I'll turn it over and give it a good press. So I've gone ahead to give it a good press. I'll be top stitching this part so that it will look like a placket on our shirt. Then on this other side, I'm going to fold it by 1/2 inch and I'll refold it by 1 inch to make it look neat. Then on the lower parts, on the hemline, I'll do the same thing. I'll fold it by 1/2 inch and I'll refold it by 1 inch. I'll sew it all the way. Then on the top, I'm going to make a loose stitch to get our ruffles. So I've done that. So this is the ruffles I made. So this is the other side. I told you it's going to look like our button allowance on our shirt dress. Then this is the hemline. I've also stitched it, and also on this side I've also stitched it. So now I'm going to place it on the dress. So I'll be placing it on this mark line I made on the waist. So I'll turn it this way. I'll make sure this placket, that is the button allowance, tallies with the main placket on the dress. So I'll fold it by 1/2 inch like this. Then I'm going to place it this way on the waistline. As you can see, the placket is aligning. So I'll also make a little ruffles here or a little pleat. Then I'm going to turn it over like so. So like I said, I'll make sure this part tallies with the main placket on the dress. So I'm going to sew it, then turn it to the other side so that I don't sew on the dress. So I'm going to pin it up. So I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. We'll have something like this when we are done sewing it. So as you can see, it's covering the other plackets, so the button will not show when we fix our button. So before then, before sewing the ruffles on the waist, I'm going to take the round of the neckline to do our collar. That's to get our collar. So I have around 19.5 inches for the collar. I've cut out a pattern paper I'll be using for the collar. I took a straight line, so the pattern paper is on a fold. I'll divide the neckline into two, so I have around 9.5. I'll add extra half an inch. That will give me 10 inches. So from this straight line, I took a straight line. I'll come down by 1.5 inches to get the collar length. So after doing that, I'll get the midpoint of this line. So the midpoint is around 5 inches, so I'm going to mark it here. Then from the end of this point, I'm going to come up by half an inch. Then from the top of this point, I'm going to come up by half an inch. I hope you understand. So I'll mark the half inch this way. Like I said, from this point I came up by half an inch. Then this other line I also went up by half an inch. So I'll also place this midpoint on the top here. I'll repeat the 5 inches mark here to get the midpoint of both lines. So from this line, I'll connect it to meet this half inch I came up with, and I'll repeat the same thing on the lower part. So I'll place this like this. Then this other part, I'll place it also like this to meet this other half inch mark. So I'm not using this part. So if you like, you can leave it straight, but for me, I'll just make a little curve here for the collar to meet the end of this mark like this. So I'll cut it out. Then I'll be cutting it on a fabric. So we'll have something like this. So I'll be adding 1/4 inch all round for seam allowance. So I've done that. I've cut out the collar on the fabric. I added interfacing, and I also added 1/4 inch for seam allowance. I also cut out another piece of fabric and I added interfacing to it. So I'll be placing good side to good side. So this method helps the collar to stay firm. So I'll pin it up. Then I'm going to sew it by 1/4 inch all the way, and I'll stop here. I'll show you when I'm done. So guys, I've stitched it by 1/4 inch, so I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'll leave half inch on the lower part here. That's on this other side. I'll leave half an inch for seam allowance. So I'll turn it to the good side. Then I'll give it a good press. So I've given it a good press. So this is the extra half an inch on this part. So what I did, I folded one side of the collar and I gave it a good press. Then I left the other side open. So I'll be sewing it. I'll be sewing this side to the collar. Then this other side, I'll be top stitching it on the collar. But I'll be explaining this later on. So I folded it to the end of this point. So I'll get the center of this collar. So I folded it into 2 equal half. Then I'm going to notch the center point here. So I'll repeat the same thing on the neckline. I'm going to pick the 2 ends like this. Then I'm going to notch the center like this. So I'm going to place the collar, that's this part that I did not fold. I'm going to place it on the neckline. So I'm going to pin it up. So I'll be sewing it. I'll sew it by 1/4 inch to the end of the placket. So this folded placket is going to be on the stitched part of the collar. I'll make sure it aligns properly. So I'm going to pin it up here. So I'll make sure it's properly fixed. I'll be sewing it by 1/4 or half an inch. So I'll repeat the same thing here. So make sure you open it up properly like this. This placket, the folded part of the placket, will be on the side seam of the collar. Look guys, I've done that. I've stitched it. So I'm going to tuck this part in like this. So this part I folded earlier that I ironed, I'm going to fold it in. I'm going to use it to top stitch the collar. So I'll tuck it in properly, and I'm going to top stitch on it. From this point, I'll top stitch it all the way till I get to the end. So I'll just pin it up, then I'll top stitch it all the way down to this point. So but before then, or after I top stitch it, I'll go ahead and take it to where I'll be fixing the buttonhole and the buttons. So I'll be fixing the buttons. I'll give space of 3 inches on each side. I'll give space of 3 inches. That's where the buttonhole will be. Then on the other side, I'm going to fix the button. So the button, I'm not fixing it on this ruffle, I'll be fixing it on this part. So I'll still give the space of 3 inches until I get to this point, and I'll show you. So guys, I've top stitched the collar. So as you can see, it's properly fixed. I made a very tiny stitch. So I also took it to where they fix buttons and buttonholes to fix my buttons. So this is the outcome of the dress. So this is the other side where the buttons are, and I fixed the ruffles to the dress. So this is the outcome. So I gave space of 3 inches on each side. So the ruffles is going to cover the other side of the button. So this is the only part that is visible on the dress. So now I'll be fixing another ruffles on the sleeve. Our sleeve also have a little ruffle, so I'm going to get the sleeve round. So the sleeve round is around 18 inches. So I'm going to times it by 2 or 2.5 to get the ruffles of the sleeve. So I'm going to cut out another panel for the sleeve. So the width of the strip is around 50 inches. So I times the round by 2.5 to get 50 inches. And the length I have, I need 7 inches, but I made it 9 inches. I'll be using 2 inches for seam allowance. So this is the hemline. I've gone ahead to fold it by 1 inch. Then this is the other side. I made a loose stitch. Here. So I'm going to pull it. I'll pick one of the threads and pull it to make the ruffles. So this is the outcome. So I'm going to pick the 2 ends together like this, and I'm going to sew it by 1/2 inch, good side to good side. So I'll repeat the same thing for the other strip. So this is our ruffles. I've gone ahead to join them together, and I make sure the round I have here is about 18 inches. So I'm going to fix it to the sleeve. I'll tuck the sleeve inside like this, good side to good side. So I'll place it this way. Then I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. I'll make sure it tallies with the sleeve. I'll repeat the same thing for the other sleeve, then I'll show you. So we fixed the sleeve. So this is the outcome. This is the ruffles on the sleeve. Remember, it's a cut together sleeve. So this is the other one. So guys, our dress is ready. We fixed the collar, we fixed the buttons, and also the ruffles on the sleeve. We also fixed the ruffle on the waistline. So the length of the ruffle on the waistline, it's 5 inches shorter than the full dress. So this is the back. So we've come to the end of these tutorials. I hope it was helpful. Guys, please don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, comment, and share. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next video.